let's look at this one. The very first level of the present Buddha's path is he tells us about karma. I mean, broadly, the whole first scope is about it culminates in the teachings of karma. Well, it starts actually with even you could argue with certainly the way, like I said, with Lama Zopa when he first started teaching modern people or the hippies, he started talking about the mind first. So let's look at that very first. Let's go back. Let's look at that first. So he tells us that he tells us that mind is not physical. Well, for us who think it's the brain, it's a big shock, So we've got to put this together. He says it's not physical, and he's found it to be this way. Second, he says it's not a product of another person. Not like that. It can't come from nowhere, so it has to be beginningless. That's the logic. So we're going to have to think about that. And then it's not physical. And the other thing is here, it's good to have as a starting point, is from the Mahayana perspective, its true nature. They talk about how the mind in its nature is pure, how mind in its nature is pure, and how mind has this Buddha nature. So there's different sort of ways of describing this, but a simple way to put what Buddha has found, as I said, what Buddha has found from his own experience, implied by this word sangye, that the neuroses in the mind, which are the source of the suffering, they cause the mind to suffer and then cause the body and speech to do things to harm others, all based on these misconceptions, which sow seeds in our mind that ripen as our future suffering. So the first thing about is the mind is that these delusions, these neuroses, these afflictions, and there's so many synonyms we could use. The typical word in Buddhist psychology is affliction. Is afflicted, mental afflictions. They have the characteristic of being delusional. We'll discuss this. That these states of mind, he has found, are not at the core of our being. I mean, we could spend the rest of the 3 days just on this, Buddha nature. But and this is the key point. And consciousness, okay, put it this way, it's pure in its nature, meaning once it's accomplished Buddhahood, that's what the mind really is. That's its true state. It's sort of like, I think I've heard about psychology, they talk about baseline. Well, Buddhahood is the baseline. Everything less than that's mental illness. Even nirvana's mental illness. It's still got more to do. Our true nature, who we really are, which we're not yet, but it's our potential. So Buddha nature means our potential. It's not as if there's some little baby Buddha in there waiting to pop out, It's not as if we've been Buddha before and then we lost it, which is a very typical teaching in Christianity. I remember discussing this with my Catholic priest friend. They say we were created in God's likeness. We're like an extension of God. So if that's true, thank you. If that's true, we have to be God. We'd have to be the same. We'd have to be the same. It couldn't be different. But somehow he gave us a choice, and then we lost the plot. And so then we got dirty again. I'm not trying to be silly, just using the analogy. But that for Buddhism would be impossible. That's why once we've realized emptiness, you can't fall back. Once you've cut the root of all this suffering, and now in touch with ultimate reality, we'll go to this. You can't possibly lose that. That you can't lose. So when we've cut the root of suffering and we've achieved bodhicitta, the combination of these, that's Buddha. That's our true state. Got to work hard to get there. So saying our mind is pure doesn't mean it's already pure. It means its potential is to be pure and can be pure because the delusions are adventitious and can be removed. I think this is a very powerful thing to think about because it gives us courage. Because the way we are feeling in our lives is we identify 100%, don't we, with the rubbish in here. As soon as the depression comes, the anxiety, the anger, we define ourselves in those terms. I am bad. I am bad, It's a source of so much pain. But if we have this confidence that the negativity is there, it's true, but it can be removed. It's not intrinsic. This is a very powerful concept. It's not intrinsic. I mean, a simple analogy seems to me is water, H2O. What water is in its nature is 2 bits of H and 1 bit of O. It can be polluted. You could even have such pollution that you drink it and would die. But that pollution is not intrinsic to that H2O. You can remove it necessarily. This is very encouraging. It's hugely encouraging. So knowing this about the mind, it's not physical, it's beginningless, it's our own, not come from someone else. It gives us an enormous sense of ownership and wanting, therefore, to practice, to do the job of becoming my true nature, you know. So the first misconception Buddha argues with in his very first stages of practice is one of the mind. Then he says karma, that everything that mind does, every millisecond of what that mind does, that's an action or karma. And the very first one is intention. Even the meaning of the word karma is intention. One of them. So this is why we have to talk about the mind. We're going to do this in a second, the different ways the mind functions. But this one of volition, I will, I want, volition, may I. This is the very first. That's mental karma, mental action. And then the body and speech follow, you know. So whatever goes on in the mind every millisecond necessarily programs the mind. Just necessarily. No one runs it. No one's punishing it. No one. It's not like you checked at the end of the day and then you get good numbers and bad numbers. It's its own natural thing. It doesn't need someone to run it. It doesn't need someone to even, it's natural what the mind does. It's a natural law that whatever the mind does produces results. Whatever the mind does programs the mind. So this is where we have to look at karma, and that is to say there are three types of action. There are two main types of actions. So-called negative, so-called positive. So when we get to middle school, high school, we learned about the mind. So let's do it here. A negative action, simple, negative action, non-virtuous action, negative action, is an action we do with our body and speech, a main one, that's driven by a negative state of mind. A virtuous action is an action we do with our body and speech driven by a virtuous state of mind. So the first ones program the mind and bring those four results: a suffering rebirth, which we're going to go into, a suffering that same tendency to keep killing, lying, stealing. It'll happen to yourself, and an environmental result. This is the natural law. This is how it plays out. Virtuous action, the same. And in a very simple way, happiness and suffering sound so cute, but if we look at our lives, and Buddha takes this as a basis, everybody, he says, doesn't want suffering. Everybody, he says, does want happiness. So happiness and suffering is simple enough, but it covers everything. I mean, think about ourselves, or the monkeys and ants as well. What drives everything we think and do and say without realizing is the wish to be avoiding suffering and the wish to be happy. It just is the basis of all our choices. So your choices are based on your tendencies. So we do have choice, but the idea of free will is a bizarre, meaningless concept. It can't be free. It can't be free of other conditions. It's bizarre. It's a dependent arising. So a negative action, so the first stage is Buddha doesn't go too much into explaining it. He just says, he suggests, he advises, he suggests we refrain from certain actions. He's got his little list of 10. First 7 are to do with behavior, body and speech. The main things. The heaviest of actions that harm others. Killing. Taking the ungiven, as Tibetans say. Or jumping on the wrong partner. Following sexual attachment. So it depends. Back at the time of India, we realized back at the time India, girls we didn't really exist except as the object of a man. It's true. And even that's expressed in the vows, actually. I think the vow, back in the beginning with Buddha, the vow to not have sexual misconduct it's called not taking someone else's partner. So it wasn't wrong because it's based on sex. It was wrong because that partner belonged to another bloke. Do you understand what I'm saying? So that means we girls can't practice sexual misconduct. We're not agents. Do you understand? It's very funny, actually. But I think we have to take it on that we girls can now be involved. We have to also not jump on someone else's partner. Did you hear what I said? Nobody, only she laughed. Nobody else. I wasn't sure what was going on. Anyway, whatever. So basically he's advising us to refrain from doing actions that are called negative, natural negativities, which are actions that harm others. But again, remember, here is not the reason to not do them. What defines them is that they harm others. But the reason at the beginning, because we're all deluded and ridiculous and self-centered, the reason he exhorts us not to do them is because Robina, sweetie pie, it'll harm you. This we miss. I can't describe to you how we miss this in the West. The number of people we say, oh, that's selfish. Oh, no, that can't be true. We've missed the first stages of practice. If we haven't got powerful renunciation of suffering and its causes, then we can't have powerful compassion. Not possible. Impossible. 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 Because suffering's far deeper. We're going to go into that than just merely having the bad things happen. So Buddha says, he suggests as his medicine, if you don't want future suffering, babe, kindly refrain from killing, stealing, lying, and jumping on the wrong partner. And then the four of speech, which is us humans, we're clever with our words, aren't we? Look at our words, the sounds coming out of our mouth. The harm we do, we mightn't kill and rape too many people, but look at our speech. Most of our problems come from our speech. It's a revelation to hear this. We don't even think of it in the West. We just think, oh, I want to meditate, To think of spiritual practice being control your speech sounds too shocking. Jeez. No, I feel like I've got a cold. I don't know. Maybe just I'm becoming a bass baritone. I don't know. I think that's what it is. Getting old, croaky voice. So, okay. So what are the four results? So okay. So now he's telling us this because he says, in reality, this is reality. Don't believe me. I'm just presenting what I've found. Here's my methodology. It's up to you. So he's on one level, he's presenting this reality that he's found to be true. I have found this to be true. But the framework for presenting it is in terms of how to practice it, not just a nice theory. And the most powerful way to live in refraining from others is to live in vows of refraining from harming others. I'll go into this. So the four of the speech, it's pretty obvious. One is saying words that aren't true. I mean, look at the harm that causes others as an action that's harmful to others. Look at it, this harm it does. It's chaos. A speech that's harsh, abusing people. That's really obvious. Speech that just is rabbiting on. We're compulsively wanting to speak. We can't cope with not speaking, so we just compulsively say anything, Just meaningless stuff, wasting ourselves, wasting our time and other people's. And the other one is talking bad things about behind backs. We can see the suffering of that one. My God, in families, in organizations, all the conspiracy theories. It's terrible. So these four, it's pretty clear the chaos this causes in our lives. So the karmic results then, okay, let's look at this in a more deep way. The karmic results, the first level of really the way they present it in the Lam Rim. The three kinds of suffering, remember? The first kind is a suffering of suffering. So that's framed, the big picture point of view, that's framed in terms of types of rebirth. Buddha's got this whole kind of way, entire model of where all sentient beings exist. First of all, there's a framing of 3 realms of existence, which is coming from the Hindus. So because they've got this samadhi, these are the greatest yogis, they get to the subtlest, deepest, subtlest level of their mind. And that's called the formless realm. And they say that's the peak. I'm being very rough here. To the depth of samadhi, that's liberation. Then there's a grosser level called the form realm, some slightly grosser level. And then there's a desire realm. And we're in that one. That's the 6 realms. And desire meaning meaning attachment, all rebirths that are the fruit of either virtue, which means the fruit is joy and bliss, or the fruit of non-virtue, which is intense suffering. The 6 realms of existence. It's like a spectrum, all the way from the God realms, which is really equivalent to what the Muslims call paradise, the Christians call heaven. Seems to me, I always say this, and I like it, that it seems to me humans over the years, over the eons of time, thousands of years, are all looking into the meaning of life. How marvelous. We should be very respectful. And it seems to me, in terms of religious philosophy, many, many similar observations would seem to me, but just different interpretations, isn't it? I think all those Christians were just reborn Hindus, basically, because they have a similar view. They came later, didn't they? Indians got bored with India and started being born in Israel. And the Muslims as well, and the Jews as well. Anyway, it's just viewpoints, isn't it? So then, you've got the where was I? I was getting carried away in my mind. The rebirths. Okay, so there's the God realms, which in terms of the desire realm is the top suburb, best suburb, total bliss. A couple of those. Then you've got the humans, which clearly, and they have subtle light bodies. These people, but clearly our bodies are not made of light. So they're kind of more like a bunch of dogs walking around. But the saving grace of a human birth, which is why Buddha would say it's a preferable rebirth, although the happiness isn't so divine, is that we've got access to our virtue, access to intelligence. And that's our saving grace, Then further along in the suburbs, the difficult suburbs, you've got the animal realm, which, if you like, in terms of the three poisons we're going to go into, these three main neurotic states of mind that all the other 83,997 the Buddha talks about subsume. I don't know the adverb here, in or assume to or in these three. Is sourced from these three. So from the point of view of ignorance, a predominance of ignorance creates the cause to have an animal type of rebirth, which is predominantly this profound ignorance, profound maripa, ignorance of how things exist, and then the grosser level of ignorance of just kind of narrow-mindedness, solid, set in stone, and therefore tremendously powerful suffering. Then you've got further along, more occupied and more suffering as the spirits, all these disembodied beings, a predominance of attachment energy. And then you've got the hell realms, the worst suffering of all, and the most occupied are the hells, and many kinds of these. So these three, see, I find, this is now a bit of a diversion, but I like this a lot. It helps my mind very much. The explanation in the Vajrayana of how we're made, what we're comprised of. It helps us understand these rebirths. It helps us understand how it's possible. So from the Vajrayana point of view, in the universe is basically matter, and they say it's made of the four elements. All the teachings of the Vajrayana, which is similar to the Ayurvedic, similar to the Chinese system. The Tibetan medical system is based on this. It used to be vaguely like that back in our culture a few centuries ago. The four elements, earth, air, fire, water. So the entirety of the physical universe is made of the four elements. So this body is the four elements. A rock, a computer, four elements. Now here, the difference between this and a computer is this set of the four elements is conjoined with a consciousness. So I'm a sentient being. So for the Buddha, there are trillions of sentient beings, trillions of mind possessors. And so in the Vajrayana, they say that our mind is inextricably linked to our own set of the four elements. The mind is the boss, okay? So this very first way that karma ripens, a type of rebirth. So in our case, at the time of our past death, not more than a few weeks before our mind found its way to our mother's fallopian tube, the death process started, and we'll talk about this. And so one of the karmic seeds of our own, in our bank vault of karmic seeds, of virtuous karmic seeds of non-killing, the most powerful of the virtuous karmic seeds, was triggered. That already programmed us for our mind, after it left this body, to go to the new mother and father. So then our four elements, so our mind is the main cause. So due to virtue, okay, there's a nice way to put this. So then I remember Lama Zopa saying, no, okay, go back a bit. Okay, so this Vajrayana model says this. We've got gross consciousness, which is sensory. Okay, now clearly that is inextricably linked and dependent upon, isn't it, the body, the eyeball, the tactile, the nerves, the smell, the ears. That's the body. But the consciousness combined with that. I consciousness is the part of our mind that's not physical, that exists in dependence upon a decent working eyeball, all the bits and pieces working nicely, and we have a cognition of eye consciousness. Ear consciousness, taste consciousness, same. So body is the mere physical, and the difference between a live body and a dead body is the absence of mind. It's left the body. So the mind is the main player, but it functions from the sensory point of view, it functions through the body. So we've got gross consciousness and gross body, the grossest level of our being, which is pretty obvious. Now, of course, that's all we posit, basically. Physical, isn't it? Then you've got subtle consciousness, and that's your mental states. So we've got two levels of way mind works, sensory and mental. Sensory and mental. And mental, that's what, as Lama Zopa says, that's where the workshop is. That's all the thousands of thoughts and feelings and concepts and emotions and viewpoints. And it's all conceptual, that we live at the grossest level of conceptuality. So there's two levels of mind here we're talking about, the two ways the mind functions. This is in the epistemological model of the mind. You've got sensory consciousness and you have mental consciousness. Sensory consciousness and mental consciousness. So then the mental consciousness, you've got conceptuality, and then you have what they call direct perception. This is completely abstract for us. This is what only you achieve this in the subtlest levels of samadhi with practice, where you have a non-conceptual direct insight into how things exist. So there's a subtle level of mental consciousness that is absolutely vital to understand, that we don't touch until we've got samadhi or anywhere near that, But so we live at the grossest level of the mental consciousness. But in comparison with the sensory, it's more subtle. So it's called subtle consciousness. And that level of our mind, our mental, our thoughts and feelings and emotions, that's inextricably linked with a subtler level of physicality. This is the Vajrayana. So there's 72,000 subtle channels, our subtle nervous system, from the tip of our toe to the tip of our head. 72,000 of them. There's a central channel, two side ones. When we go to the death process, maybe we'll discuss this. And coursing within all those channels are all these different subtle physical energies, wind energy, air energy. And this is for the Tibetan medical system and the Chinese one. That's the basis of good health. So then we've got these 72,000 subtle channels, wind energies coursing through those, which is the subtle physicality, and conjoined with, inextricably, all our different states of mind. This is clearly not neuroscience. So you go to your Tibetan doctor, she feels your pulses, and she feels the imbalance of certain winds, and she knows that's because of attachment connected to those winds. So whatever your mind does impacts upon those winds, which is your body. And whatever the winds and the body does impacts upon your mind. They're inextricably linked, but the boss one is the mind. So now, as Lama Zopa said one time, this helped me a lot just to join the dots. Everything, so because we're talking about here, everything the mind does programs the mind. And because our mind is linked to the subtle wind energies, which is the subtle level of our physicality, as Lama Zopa said, just a moment of anger, let's say, that programs your mind as more anger. You grow the habit to be angry, obviously. That goes deeper and deeper. It grows a habit. At the same time, it pollutes those wind energies. And that's then eventually manifests as gross physical illness. So all the illness we have comes down to the mind. All starts with, and not just this life, but from countless past lives. Every tiny thought we have programs the mind, and therefore every tiny thought we have impacts upon the winds, which is a subtle physicality. So it's virtuous states of mind. It purifies the winds, and that can manifest as good health. You can even heal yourself in that way. But not only that, as Lama Zopa says. So the mind, let's say the moment of anger, it grows the potential to keep being angry. It pollutes the winds, and eventually that manifests at a grosser level as physical illness, and then even over many lifetimes manifests eventually as the external environment. And so you get born in a world that's stinky and disgusting and harmful or whatever it is, because every tiny thing we experience, our mind, our experience in the hands of others, and the physical world, main cause, our past actions. So this logic, if we can hear this just as an idea, then we can understand how we can have a hell realm birth. In other words, for a hell being, due to heavy-duty negative karma ripening at the time of their death, they create the cause to be born in a type of intense, incredible mental suffering where your physical energies are predominantly fire element. What are the four elements, Spirits are predominantly air energy. This is the logic of it, taking this view. I found this very helpful. Just those things Rinpoche said. Help me join the dots, So no, as Lama Yeshe says, hell is not some place where the devil is saying, ha ha, I'm waiting for Lama Yeshe. Hell is the manifestation of the suffering negative energy of that suffering sentient being created by us. We create these. It's not like a magical holding a wand. It's natural. Karma is like natural personal evolution or devolution, whichever one you call it. We create our own reality. We create the cause to have that suffering environment. We create the cause to have that body. We create the cause to have that mother. We create the cause to have anger. We create the cause, therefore, to get enlightened as well. We are the boss. That's a very amazing view if we think about it. We should be so happy to hear it, Let us hear it childlike as punishment and reward, which is how we mostly hear it. This is just absurd. There's no punisher. There's no rewarder. It's a silly idea. Complete misconception, Buddha says. Okay, I'm not being rude. If you have faith in a creator, please keep that. I'm giving you the Buddha's view, that's all. And he's found from his own experience, by his own observation, in his own mind. So the bigger picture of the suffering is the realms of existence. The suffering of suffering is being born as an animal, a spirit, or a hell being. But within this life, as a human, which is the fruit of virtue, we can also understand the suffering of suffering, which is the framework I'm using here, which is most accessible to us. So the very first level of practice, Buddha exhorts us to not kill, not steal, not lie, badmouth. Why? Because that will ripen, 1, as a type of suffering rebirth, 2, within that rebirth, or certainly even within a human rebirth, the tendency to keep killing, 3, the experience of being killed or dying young, and 4, sickness and ill health. So we can flip it over. Non-killing causes at least a decent human body. Non-killing produces the tendency to keep not killing, which is a miracle. Non-killing as an experience will be you won't die young and won't get killed. And non-killing in terms of the environment is you'll be fat and healthy. You can eat rubbish, it won't matter. I remember I always think of Warren Buffett, that mega rich man who's famous for being very humble and unassuming. He's now not 97 or 98. He's finally resigned from his job of running that mega big company. And he said he started feeling old when he was 90. But he's famous for his diet. He's famous for being very humble, drives the same old Toyota. He's worth like billions. Lives in the same, little old house somewhere other in Nebraska or Omaha or somewhere. I don't know. Anyway, he is famous for his diet. All his life, his one diet, his main diet is cheeseburgers, some flavored Coca-Cola, and vanilla ice cream. So, I mean, I don't know, somehow, so clearly we can deduce that he's got the experience, the environmental result of non-killing is you're fat and healthy, even if you eat rubbish. People don't get COVID. You hug your old grandma who's got COVID. You go to a hospital and take care of people who've got COVID. You don't get COVID. Because COVID sickness COVID or these pandemics is a collective karma of collective killing. And the environmental karma takes the longest to ripen. It can be thousands of lifetimes, So thousands of lifetimes ago, we all collectively created the cause to get sick at the same time, millions of us, That's environmental karma of killing. Any sickness. So we can have any or all of these. We can see that. We've got a human birth, which is a fruit of not of virtue, but we might have not a tendency to kill, get killed, and get sick. 3 results of killing, You don't have to have all 4. And this is where in our culture, we suffer tremendously because we assume if I'm good now, nothing bad will happen to me. So it's really confusing when bad things happen when you don't deserve it. That's what I mentioned before. That's tremendous suffering for us, or why we're so puzzled why bad things happen, when good things happen to bad people. It seems outrageous to us. Because what happens to us in this life is a fruit of past actions. How we think our tendencies now are due to past actions. Environmental result is due to past actions. It's impacted upon by what we do now, like sort of fertilizer. In other words, if you have if you decide suddenly to start stealing today, the tendency was there in the past, but it's come to the surface, and so you follow it. And then you get stolen from tomorrow. We think that's due to karma. No, it's not. It's not a direct result at all of stealing yesterday. So the stealing yesterday is from the habit of past stealing. And the being stolen from tomorrow is also from a past life due to stealing. But that present stealing today is like a fertilizer that help ripen more quickly your past action of having stolen. It's not a direct result. Can you hear that point? It's important to understand it. Shall I say it again?
Yes.
Okay.
Why is it? Why is it? I understand.
Because if you are kind today, then someone is unkind to you in return, you think then therefore kindness doesn't work. Whereas if you know that you're being kind today, it also helps you now, but you sow seeds to keep being kind in the future, and in the future to people be kind to you. So you being kind today, then but tomorrow someone's mean to you. That's not due to that has no relationship to being kind, but it's got no relationship anyway. So let's say the other one is, let's say you steal today, right? That's because you've got the habit to steal. And then tomorrow I steal from you. You think, oh, well, there's karma. No, you can't. Mostly in this life, everything we experience is not from actions we do in this life. So what I mean is, you also had the tendency to be stolen from, but you're deciding to steal today acts as a fertilizer for the stealing to be ripening tomorrow as being stolen from. You see what I'm saying? It's not in this life is what I'm getting. So if we have this view, like in our life, if we are a good person, then we go crazy when bad things happen because we can't see a cause. But when we understand it's karma from past lives, then it misses an explanation. Do you understand?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, karma is like, if it's a natural law, it means it's technical. They say you can't see the workings of karma until you're fully enlightened. It's so complex. It's so subtle, so incredibly subtle, If it's a natural law. This is what Buddha is saying. It's a natural law. No one made it up. No one runs it. No one's got copyright on it. No one makes it work. It's not punishment, not reward. That's the part you don't read this in the Tibetan text because they're talking to the choir there. We have to kind of think it through, It's a natural law. It's a natural law. It's a natural law. Any questions now? Time for questions. Time for questions. Yes. I forget your name. Eitan. Like in ETAN.
Yes, a ton of questions.
Oh, come on.
So you said something yesterday which struck me about if you have an inclination, you've got your tendencies, you have an inclination against those tendencies for the better, that you should grab onto it. I think you said grab onto the inclination.
Yeah.
It feels often overwhelming, the amount of tendencies, especially
yes, of course it is.
And past life
That's
tendencies.
Right. That's right.
But that opportunity, I guess, where's the tipping point where you have more inclinations to grab onto?
I think it's as simple as that. There's practice. When you first start playing piano, you got the potential to play piano. You have the attraction to play piano. But put your hands on the piano first day, you're a total failure. So the tipping point is when you can just do it automatically. The tipping point takes a while. Same with anything you learn. It's really just the more you do it, and even the tiniest inclination, listen to it and try to practice it. And then you'll fall over it immediately and do it again and again. So it's a logical process of the more you practice one thing, it weakens the opposite. And that's why purification, Lama Zopa talks about this a lot. You don't just try to stop stealing. You also purify the past stealing, which clears the garden out so the non-stealing karma can ripen. So these purification practices, there's two main things that really help us practice, and I'm going to go into these: living in vows and purification. They're tremendously powerful psychologically that make it easier. Do you understand? Like put atomic bombs under the tendencies to pull out the weeds all in one go sort of thing. Do you understand? So when we understand as a natural law, that means every time I say I must not kill, we can see how long habits take. I mean, look at our attachment to food. We might be attached to killing and stealing and jumping on girls every day. Just plain old food is the most boring habit on the planet and so unharmful to anybody else. You understand me? But look how hard it is. It's so deep in the mind. And that's why we have to really understand how when the habits are deep, the very first thing is don't try and change the habit in the mind. It's too hard. At least don't follow it. That's what the behavior one is. At least don't follow it. Keep your hand in your lap when it comes to the cake. But it's difficult because one of the signs of attachment is you think about the thing when it's not there. Now look at us. If you're attached to video games, they're in your mind 24 hours a day. If we're attached to food, it's in our mind all the time. If you're attached to sex, you can't think of anything else. We all know this, and we're so overwhelmed by that. So that's going to be the longest to go, but at least don't follow it. Don't follow it. That's the part that's hard. That's the discipline.
So my follow-up would be,
yeah,
I did enjoy hearing the word chook in a Dharma talk.
Oh, the chook, yeah, he understands.
Exactly.
Australians call chickens chooks, and a chicken is a chick. No, a chick is what? Oh no, a chick is a chicken for us in Australia, and a chicken is a chook.
Or a chick is a girl.
What?
A chick is a girl.
A chick's also a girl. That's right. But that's American.
So I guess the follow-up is, with all these tendencies, I often feel like a chook. And so I guess the question is the overwhelmingness of those tendencies.
I know, it is overwhelming. Yeah. I mean, it is overwhelming. It is overwhelming. I agree. It is overwhelming. That's why it's so powerful and necessary to think about the potential. Like, it's overwhelming that you can't play the piano. When the first go, I can't do it, Mum, I tried, and you give up. But if you go to the concert and you see what other people have achieved, you use that as encouragement. That's your potential too. So potential is a powerful kind of to encourage us. We've got to remember it. But if we're overwhelmed by defining ourselves, I'm hopeless, we can never move an inch, you know. And it's easy to buy into all because the deluded voice, the irony is the deluded voices, you know, like I joke and say, I've never heard anyone say to me, Robina, I can't stop thinking good thoughts. We've got to practice them, you know. I can't stop thinking good thoughts. As we all know, our mind uncontrolled is by definition the unhappy ones. Do you understand? Unless you're a bodhisattva, then you're controlled by good thoughts. So we've got to know that, but remember the virtue, remember our good qualities, remember that we've got a human body, remember all that, and that it picks us up a bit and get a more reasonable picture of ourselves. It's so important, incredibly important. Yes. What's your name?
My name is Kevin.
Kevin, oh, you told me already. I'm sorry.
So modern neuroscience would support this, saying that the neuroplasticity of the human mind is that we can eradicate the bad by feeding it good, and we can intensify the good by feeding it more and more.
That's what. Yeah, I mean, I remember one Canadian scientist saying the greatest finding of the 20th century is neuroplasticity. Yeah.
Thank you.
But I don't think does neuroplasticity say you can get rid of them, all of them, utterly, completely, and become Buddha? I don't think so.
No, they don't subscribe to that.
but it's already pretty good. But finally, we're catching up with Buddha and realizing we're not stuck with what we're born with.
I just wanted to also offer, so you quoted the cheeseburger eating.
Mr. Warren Buffett.
Buffett. I mean, Buffett is about investment. But Buffett is about long-term investment, not immediate return, which is what made him so successful.
Oh, no, I understand.
So he invests in good karma that will come to us.
No, absolutely. He's got a very wise, in that way, he's got a very wise way of seeing it. And he's not greedy. It's what's so wonderful about him. He's not greedy. He just seemed to be very good at making money and enjoyed it, but he's very humble. I love that man, actually. I know, it's a good point, that one. Very good. And that's really what we're trying to do here. It's true. It's exactly true. No, it's good. Thank you, Kevin. Who else? Yes, sweetheart. Talk to me.
So we talked about, of course, the non-virtues and how, because eventually they'll ripen into the four ripenings, that we want to refrain from them, even in the moment, right? Try to refrain from them. My question, though, is my question, though, is when good things are happening to you, let's say you're attending a good teaching or whatever, is there anything that you can do in that moment to like replant that good seed? That's right.
That's the real key. That's the point. When we have the view of karma, which is that everything I experience is the fruit of my past actions, every time a non-virtuous and every time a suffering arises, we go, there's a weed. I mustn't have pulled it out. What a drag. I must not do it again. So you learn, but it's just hard. And then the other one, which we never do, because is when the good things happen, remember it's due to your past virtue. And therefore you must do it again. So like we know that with our garden, you see the veggies out there, you never forget for 1 second that you planted them. So you know also you would therefore never have this hubris just to greedily eat them all up and forget to plant more. You'd never do that. And when we understand karma, that's how we treat our good things. But we just take them for granted. That's the trouble. We just eat them up greedily. Do you understand me?
Yeah. But in the moment, let's say that you're eating or that you're getting it, can you do anything in that moment, or is it just reminding yourself, I got to replant again later?
But that's what I'm saying. That's what you're doing in this moment. So by the moment you have a virtuous thought, that moment you realize that some person smiling at you is a fruit of your past virtue. So you think, I must smile again. I must smile back at others. Right there you do it. Right there you think it. Right there. You own it, and therefore tell yourself to do it again. Every time you eat that one cauliflower, you remember to plant another one. You never just greedily eat it and assume there's going to be cauliflowers there. Don't understand me? It's right there. You change your attitude towards it. Right there is purification.
I see.
Don't understand me? Yeah. Right there. Yes, someone else. Yes, sweetheart. Yeah. What's your name?
Linda.
Linda, talk to us.
I'm new to all of this.
Oh, you! My gosh, you jumped in the deep end.
No.
So far, so good.
As far as following you and your teaching. So, okay, I've been born in a different light, say, of what I want to be now.
Yeah.
So go along.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden there's the awakening of not wanting to go along because something is occurring. And wanting to learn something different, but there's always those forces that are pushing against.
That's right.
And I'm thinking, do I just exclude them totally?
Give them all up and go to the mountains.
Yes. You know, even
this is
planting.
I understand, darling. It's a really good. That's a good point.
I want to plant.
Yeah.
And replant, but then others will say, "You're so crazy. Why do you want to do that?"
Well, that's where to do this job that we're talking about can be quite invisible to others. So if you've got husbands and babies and grandchildren and aunties and uncles and neighbours, you could argue that if you're really working well on yourself, they would never need to know. They just see you they just see the evidence would be you became more content, more easygoing, and more patient. You don't have to say, "Oh, I'm a Buddhist doing this and karma this and something else." You don't have to say all that. It's not easy, but.
So from what I've been learning, that's to hear you say it that way is the reminder to always realize that it's not about what everybody else.
Absolutely. And this is what this gets us to, Linda. And we're going to talk about this more, but it's something we're going to talk about the way attachment works. If we look at the mind and the way Buddha talks effectively, even the Four Noble Truths, even this attachment is the main source of our suffering, which sounds so cute because we don't use that word like that. We're going to go into it. But the main attachment we have, forget about sex and drugs and rock and roll, which are pretty predominant in us. They're kind of the first energy. First level is our senses, right? But the deepest one, the most primordial, is what other people think of us. We want to be seen as a good girl. So this is what drives most of us and makes most of us inauthentic, and what makes most of us scared to change anything. Oh, I can't do that. He might get upset. He might disapprove. We don't even realize that it's so profound. So to have the courage to follow what you think you need to follow, this is pretty good. It's pretty powerful. And the pressure from the outside is very hard to resist.
Because that comes in.
What, darling?
Have a community of support.
That's why if you have friends, yeah. So try if you live in a family of footballers, try and practice tennis. Quite difficult. So that's really what it is. So you got to find some tennis players.
Yes, because
that's where it helps.
No one around me.
That's right.
Thinking this
that's
way.
Right. No, exactly.
They're saying she's really gone off the deep end. But
I know. Well,
I don't really care. But yet there's still those forces.
I know. Well, then I know you just got it. That's why you got to have the wisdom to be skillful, taking what you feel is right, but also maybe don't express it so much. We like to say what we think. That's the part then people can think you're the wackiest person on the planet. So keep your mouth shut, honey. And then find some fellow tennis players. Do you understand? Do you understand? No, really, it's an important point.
Because I talk too much.
No, we all do, baby. Don't worry. We all do. We all want other people to know what we think. But the real one is, if we're really content with our own thinking, we won't need to say it.
Yeah, getting that approval. Yeah, even if it's buying a new pair of sneakers and showing it to somebody.
That's right, exactly. And we call that sharing, which is wonderful to have loving friends. But sometimes it's almost like with this suffering of attachment to what other people think, we think we're nothing unless we share. People have to approve of my sneakers. And if they all don't, we'll go kill ourselves. So we've got to know we choose our sneakers because we like them. So this is a very hard practice. I mean, this is quite sophisticated level of giving up attachment. It means we're quite a fully developed being content in who we really are ourselves. We have to learn to become that. At the same time, when you speak and you're sharing with others, it's mainly for their benefit. So there's another way of putting it. If you think about it, I like to focus for myself as a guideline for my life. If you've got the wisdom wing, which is all the nuts and bolts of karma, working on your own mind, do you understand? Like we're talking here, that's the wisdom wing. So from the wisdom wing point of view of your practice, the only reason you're going to use your mouth is to communicate with somebody about what you're doing, or check something up, or ask a question. But if you got the other one is the compassion wing, and the only reason to talk is to help others. There's only two reasons to talk: help yourself with your own practice, or help others. So we'd be silent most days, but most of it doesn't talk out blur, you know.
I think I don't know what guided me to say to become a nurse and care for people.
There you go.
And never judging what happened to them, what was the cause. It was irrelevant.
Right.
Just caring for them.
Amazing.
But then there's that subtle shift in, say, what's happening to you, who's caring for you.
And that's what you're working on at the moment, you're saying. That's amazing, darling. Now see, very often you can say many people are like you. I remember when I was at school I'd say, what are you going to be when you grow up? They'd say, oh, a nurse. And I'd think, what do I want to be a nurse for? You know, because I felt like sort of serving people was a dumb idea, you know. But many people are like that. It's amazing and so compassionate and kind that you have a tendency to want to help others. But often what happens is, what we don't notice is that that's also driven by our attachment to being seen as, we get a lot of feedback, and it's attached to being seen as a good girl, and then we sacrifice ourselves without realizing it. And then we get used as a doormat.
And we can't change anyone, I mean.
Also that. Yes.
So I can only change myself.
That's also, that's what,
barely
that's all that.
do that.
That's exactly right. So keep going, Linda. You're doing all right. What else, people? Yeah. Yes, go. Oh, okay, sweetheart. You talk. Come on.
Hi. My name's Allison. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm in preschool. So I would like to know.
You're peaceful.
No, I'm in preschool.
Oh, in preschool.
Yeah, we're junior school.
Oh, I get you now. I get you. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But so I want to know what I'm missing. If I don't care about getting punched in the nose, I'm not attached to my nose, and everybody around me also doesn't care about getting punched in the nose, why would I stop punching people in the nose?
Ask it in a different way.
Why would I stop?
So what do you mean by not
harm?
care? Why would you get to a point where you don't care about being punched in the nose? Why would you get to that conclusion? Why would that be a result of thinking about karma? That's the opposite. If you think about karma, you would have to think, I don't want to be punched in the nose. You know it's hot suffering, you don't want it. That's what causes you to stop. But if you just end up saying nihilistically, well, do what you like with me, punch me, that's horrible. That's not the conclusion at all. That's nihilism. That's not the conclusion.
Why?
What? Huh? You're suggesting that by taking the view of karma would lead you to the conclusion that you don't care about being punched. That's nihilism. That would be a great mistake.
If something bad happens to me,
yes,
and I say, this is happening because in a past life
because you created it. It's the fruit of one of your past actions.
Yes, so this is the fruit of past action, so therefore I am raped.
That's right. So then you've got to look at it, and what would you do next? What's your next step?
If I say, this rape isn't causing me to suffer.
So this what isn't? What?
Let's say I'm experiencing this terrible thing and I'm not suffering. I know that.
Oh, okay. So stop there. I'm trying to work out that assumption. Why do you say I'm not suffering? Why do you say that? What do you mean by that? Why is that your thought that would arise when your boyfriend punches you in the nose? Why would you say I'm not suffering? What do you mean by that? Where's that coming from? You mean, okay, no, are you suggesting that because you are the one who caused it, therefore you're not suffering because of the punch?
Yes, I say I accept this.
Yeah, that you did it. But why would, but you ask, but it is suffering to be punched, isn't it? It's simple. It does cause physical pain. You agree? Yes. And we prefer not to have physical pain. You agree? So it's sort of like if you go to your garden and you see the weeds growing, you know that they're there because you mustn't have pulled them out, right? So your own responsibility that you must have planted them, but that doesn't mean, oh, well, let them grow. It doesn't matter. That's nihilism. You go, I don't want weeds. And that causes you to then stop planting more. So when you learn from your experiences that the suffering that happens to us at the simple level of bad things happening is not pleasant, we don't want them. It's very simple. So that's what caused you to stop wanting to do it, to create more. So that caused you to want to renew your wish not to harm others, because you know you don't want that suffering. That's what drives you to want to give it up. You're very right. If it ends up thinking I'm not suffering, then you wouldn't want to, you wouldn't care. But that's nihilism. That's what I'm trying to say. And keep it simple. Don't make it all fancy. Just keep it simple. No one wants being harmed. No one likes being harmed. It's the most simple level. So you got to recognize. So the usual one is, I don't know about karma. My boyfriend punches me and I get angry and upset, and how dare you punch me? It's not fair. I don't deserve it. And you have all the drama, and then I'll probably punch him back. And that keeps the whole ball rolling. So if I'm using the view of karma, it's still painful, but I own it. I must have caused it. So then what's the conclusion? I don't want this to happen again. I don't want to be punched again. So I've got to stop punching, stop harming others. That's the conclusion. That's like compassion for yourself. Do the steps make sense? But why? I want to know why you're saying I'm not suffering. You're not suffering because you are suffering, but the main cause isn't the punch. That's all you're saying. It's still called suffering, though. Why would saying the punch isn't the main cause of suffering, why would you deduce that means no suffering? That's nihilism. Can you see? That's the point I'm trying to get to. Nihilism. Yeah, that's too. You threw out too much. Okay. You understand me? Yeah. It is suffering. Yeah, I do. Simple level. It is. Okay, when you're more advanced and you've realized emptiness, you won't suffer. Punch me again. Who cares? But this is very first level. Recognize the fact that bad things happen, and you're sick of bad things, and you're sick of bad things. There's nothing special. It's very simple. And that's what drives you. It's like if you keep getting diabetes, you're sick of it. You've got to be sick of the suffering. Just stop eating. Stop creating the cause for it.
Okay. I think it's connected.
Okay, a little bit. Think about it. Thank you. Go, somebody. Yeah, here. Yes. Yes.
Hi, I'm Betsy.
Betsy. Hi, Betsy.
Hello. How come it can't be random that someone comes up? How come it can't be random that someone just comes up and punches me?
Well, if we use this concept of a natural law, can you think of an example of a natural law like gravity?
Okay.
Could there ever be a thing that isn't could suddenly a ball stay in the sky one day?
No.
If it's a natural law, it's got to be coherent and consistent every time. That's the point. Try and get our heads in. If it is that, it has to be consistent and coherent every time. And it has to apply to every instance. I think that's what we deduce from being a natural law, isn't it?
So you have to accept karma as a natural law. Well, you have to take it as your working hypothesis is the way to think. In other words, you don't know music enough yet, but you have to take it as a working model that you hear your teacher to explain it. You haven't experienced it enough, but you've got to take it as your hypothesis, otherwise you're going to be in trouble. Even if you hear 1 + 1 is 2, you don't understand maths yet. So you just learn it first, and gradually you'll start to understand the theories, and you'll start to sort of then take it on board and become more natural. You've got to start somewhere. So you've got to look into Buddhism carefully, think about the Buddha, look at other people, look at examples of it, and think, okay, I'm going to give it a go. I'm going to take it as a hypothesis here, not just swallow it whole. I mean, Einstein would not tell you just to swallow whole what he tells you. You can take it as your, you might even not even know how to count 1 + 1 yet, but you like what you hear other people talk. Okay, I'm going to give it a go. I'm going to act as if E = mc², and you start at the beginning and you go 1 step at a time, moving towards it. That's the way. That's the approach. You get my point? Not to swallow it whole or reject it. That's what we think of as religion, because we assume it can't be proved. You see my point? Yeah. In other words, be prepared to find it wrong. Sorry?
Be prepared to find it wrong. I'm prepared to find Buddha wrong. Do you understand me?
Yes.
That's the approach. It's what scientists think. You've got to have an open mind. Not just, I think I like it and I'll leave it there. That's just stupid. Do you understand me? Yes. Yeah. Okay. Very good. Thanks. Thank you. Who else was there? Go on, sweetheart. Yeah. Felicity had a question. Yeah, please. What time's our tea break? Now. Now. There isn't one. Oh, there is one. Oh, that's now. Okay, one more question. Go.
I'm trying to think in my head. Oh, this is Felicity. I'm trying to think in my head of, so if I purify karma, but the other person still has the karma, say, to not receive a smile. I understand
that. They haven't stopped. They haven't left. Yeah, that's.
Yeah, they don't have the karma to receive a smile from me, but I purified my karma, and I am making an effort to smile at every single sentient being.
That's right. So then I
come across you, then what happens there if I've been making an effort, I smile at every person I've come across, but you don't have the karma to receive my smile?
So keep it simple, Felicity. What's the question?
Well, like,
try and form it without telling a story. Come to the conclusion and ask a question.
What happens where it's like the person doesn't have the karma, but I've purified my karma?
You're still going to bump into them.
Yeah.
But because you're so totally different, they might still continue to dislike you or whatever, but it'll be water off a duck's back for you. I mean, look, millions of people hate the Dalai Lama. He couldn't care less. Do you understand me? It's due to past karma. They still hate him. He's being nice to them in return. It doesn't mean, what's wrong with that?
I guess it more like specifically like the action of like more specifically the action of I'm like that person doesn't have the karma to receive.
But that's a very strong action. Millions of people hate the Dalai Lama.
Yeah.
That's a very powerful action. And if they could, they would probably kill him. So what's the question? What's the question?
The question is, I've been pure.
No, never mind. Just think of that example. He's completely purified. There's still people who hate him. So what's the question? There's the answer to your question. They're still going to hate him. Still going to, from past life. They hate him. If everything he's experiencing, including as a Buddha, is the fruit of past actions also, because the fruit of their relationship from the past. But he's finished the job. They haven't finished their job. They still. So then there's the proof. They're not, I can't see the. Don't go too deep into that one. You just get too caught up, I think. But in general, if you've got to do your job, you can't do anything else but that, and that's going to completely change the dynamic in many ways, completely different. But still, they're going to be where they are, and you're going to still meet them again, and still they're going to still dislike you. Where's the question there? Is that not enough for you?
I'll think about it more.
Do you still generate merit if they don't notice it? Or
no, he's not asking that. Not. But just think about that. Can you think about that, please? I know what you're saying, but don't get too caught up in that.
Okay.
Don't worry about it. I'm not trying to be just coughing it off. What else, people? Something? Tea break. One more. Yes, talk to me.
When you were talking earlier about controlling speech and body.
Yeah.
Why not start with the mind? Because when thoughts arise, they can lead to speech, which can then lead to harmful actions in the body, etc.
Exactly. I think, okay, I'll use an example. If your tendency to drink alcohol is quite strong, which is mental, I think if you keep living among other people who drink alcohol and have alcohol on the table every day, for you to not put your hand out is very difficult. Yeah. So you've got to remove yourself from the object. So it depends on the time, on the situation, on the tendency. You've got to remove. The first has to be for your own sake. Is, in other words, no one on the planet would ask you to give up attachment to alcohol, which is the mind, before you give up alcohol. Yeah. You've got to remove yourself from the object. So if you've got such a violent relationship with somebody, you get raging angry every day, you have to get away because the habit is so strong you can't control.
Yep. Thank you.
Do you see my point?
Yeah.
That's the reason.
Thank you.
It doesn't mean we also can't work on the mind, but when some very strong experiences, we've got to protect ourselves.
It's just overwhelming and you have no choice.
No, almost like no choice because the habit is so ingrained.
Yeah.
It's impossible to resist,
Thank you so much.
Do you understand? Yeah. So people have a tea break, I think. We're going to have a tea break, are we? Is that the plan? Sheila, what's down there? Scones and cream and toast and jam and chocolate and what have we got? Tea and coffee and biscuits? And cookies. Good, okay. So you people, we're going to have a cup of tea now. I'll see you in 30 minutes, all right? Everybody? See you, sweethearts. Okay. Thanks. All right. So we remember Buddha, Bodhisattva. We'll talk about this later. Sitting in the sky, radiant, blissful. Huh?
We have a tanka of Bodhisattva.
Oh, good. Okay, behind us, there he is, looking gorgeous. This is this is called the Bodhisattva aspect. Bodhisattva, as opposed to the monk aspect, which is in the sutra teachings. you know, and each of these is representation really of different qualities, and we can discuss the meaning of all this later. So visualize in the sky, if you have a spiritual teacher, a mentor, a lama, a guru, he visualizes their mind manifesting as Vajrasattva for our benefit, sitting on his multicolored lotus. I think it's multicolored. Yes. And white moon disk and a yellow, I think, golden sun disk, emptiness and compassion. And holding a bell in his left hand, a dorji in his right, crossed at the heart, which represents the union of the two truths or the two wings of the bird, wisdom and compassion, just there in the sky. Okay, so now let's continue looking at how karma works, Buddha's views, about his observation of how reality is, and how each of these views he presents is basically his view of how things do exist, and how he says this is reality, and because you have a view that isn't in sync with reality, this is why you suffer. This is what you've got to keep remembering. When we hear this with mathematics, we want to get to what reality is. We don't mind saying it's absolutely true that 1 + 1 is 2. But as soon as it comes to ethics and morality and spiritual and religious philosophy, we get very nervous because we think it's coming from a creator and we're being forced to believe it, you know. That's just complete misconception here. But it's very deep in our bones to think this way. So Buddha's talking like a scientist in this sense, that things exist in a certain way. And our suffering is because we have these layers and layers of ever more subtle misconceptions in the mind that basically misrepresent reality back to us. That's how they say. So this very first one, mind is not physical. Mind is not the brain. There's no essence called a soul or a spirit that's separate from everything, that's given to us by somebody else. It's not like that. We have consciousness and we have the body. That's it. And then he tells about how this mind is run by the law of karma, like gardens are run by the law of botany. No one runs it, no one manages. I mean, you can manage botany, but no one makes up botany. And that's what's the crucial point about, again, natural law means, like botany, we know there are people who've come along and have identified how things work and then written it down. So now have written down botany, written down mathematics, written down theories. But they didn't invent the thing itself. That's what natural law means. A scientist is a person who articulates what they've observed, presents the theory in words, you know, but it's always been there. You don't have to know botany for botany to exist, but it helps. Then you can learn it and use it for your own advantage. So karma's like that. It's a natural law, which is the big fuss we make in science, you know, that's the point. That's how Buddha thinks. Surprising to us. Because he smells like religion, like everybody else, you know, seems the same. So then karma is the first one. The mind is the first, and then there's law that he's identified that what the mind does is the dynamic that counts. What the mind does every millisecond is what produces that person, Not only in terms of the type of body you have and the type of realm you exist in, but also the tendencies in the mind. Not only that, but based on what you've done in the past in relation to others you've met, you're going to meet them again. There's history with each other, and we keep bumping into each other, experiencing the fruits of our past collective experiences with each other. Like that abortion, you know, that person, a human being, a person. I always think of it as a she. I don't know. They didn't get born, so I never got to find out. Due to strong history in the past with me. And think about the history between a mother and a child. That's a pretty intense karmic connection. You ran like a magnet to get in their womb, in their body itself. Their body, you can't have a closer connection than that, you know, my God. So at her time of her death, the karmic seed that was triggered of her own non-killing programmed to go to my womb personally. And a few weeks, then she left the body and hung out in this intermediate state between lives. We'll talk about this. And then as soon as I jumped into that bed with that bloke, pound an hour, Robert. And it was in Earl's Court. Earl's Court in London is famous in the 60s. So every Australian went to live in Earl's Court, you know, Kangaroo Valley, they called it. He lived in Earl's Court. I'll never forget. He didn't know about the baby. So this little person came running like a magnet. They created a course to come to my womb. And that first second with this boy, I'm pregnant. Many women say this. I mean, one person I know, she was staying with her mother. She and her husband were staying with her mother while their house was getting built. And she came down to breakfast one morning. Oh, Mummy, I'm pregnant. And the mother said, oh, when did you know? She said, 40 minutes ago. It's very common, apparently. I don't know if any men have that experience, fathers. So that's when the consciousness goes. At that time, I didn't think of it as a consciousness. I just knew. I said the words, I'm pregnant. Oh, I'm pregnant. And the next thought, have an abortion. So that's the point here. This is very hard to hear it, but it's very powerful. If that person in my womb hadn't created the cause from another action to be killed by me, I couldn't have had that thought. Or if I had the thought, it would not have been successful because she had to have had the karma to be killed. But that's the dynamic of karma between us. A person can't just randomly give you money for no cause. It's because you've got some history in the past, you've got generosity karma, you meet each other, and they're kind of compelled to give you, It was this is really interdependent, and this is beginning to prove emptiness already. It's dependent arising, Meaning nothing exists in isolation. That's why the idea of free will is an absurdity. Free means not dependent on anything. It's a bizarre idea. We wouldn't even like that idea. It's ridiculous. Choice, yes. Free, ridiculous. So karma between people, very powerful. And we can see this in our lives. You meet a person, you can't stand the sight of them. You've got no idea why, And this is the point. It's because they have harmed you in the past. That's what's powerful about it. The person in my womb had created the cause to be killed by me. Very powerful. Karma between us, Good karma, bad karma, same. So karma ripeness 1 as a type of rebirth. So in general, this whole business of happiness and suffering, and the whole business of negative actions create suffering and positive actions create happiness. Not punishment, not reward. It's a natural law. So these words we don't like in psychology. They sound like judgment. We don't like talking like this. This is fundamental to the understanding of the Buddha's view of the mind. So now let's go to the middle scope, high school, and look at the mind. Back to karma in a minute, back and forth. Because we want to look at the second cause of suffering. First cause is karma, the action, body and speech, driven by the second one, the state of mind. And in suffering, it's called a delusion. In happiness, it's called a virtue that causes it. So there's really so in this model of the mind in Buddhism, it's deceptively simple, but extremely helpful. So remember I said the epistemological model of the mind, you've got sensory and mental. So now you've got the mental. And within the mental consciousness, you've got the grosser level of conceptuality. And this is including everything you experience, including what we call feelings. And this is surprising. But understanding this point in Buddhist psychology gives us an incredible insight into how our mind works and why we suffer. And therefore why we can remove the delusions from the mind. So we can see we've got thousands of thoughts and feelings and emotions. Even in the Western model, they say 1,000 a second. I wouldn't be surprised. And at the moment, it's like chaos, isn't it? There's no clear. It's like it needs editing. It's complete chaos, all jumbled together like a bunch of thoughts with no cohesion, no clarity. And of course, we assume that's normal, but that's what these genius Hindus invented, this technique to sort it all out. Which is incredible. So all these thousands of thoughts and feelings and emotions are all divided very simply into 3 categories. And this is in relation in particular, this first 2 in relation to the emotionals, what we call emotions, So the first lot, but there's also including just misconceptions, are kind of almost, so okay, these are called these afflictions, these particular misconceptions that have the component of being painful. Then there's the other ones, the virtues, that have the component of happy feelings, of happiness. So there's negative states of mind, and the 3 poisons are the summary of all of them. In fact, often in the text, you're going to read about how Buddha has identified 84,000 neurotic states of mind. I always ask the Geshis, where will I find that text? He said, you won't find it, they say. But he always talks about 84,000. So maybe we have to deduce them ourselves. But as Ling Rinpoche says, 21,000 of the 21,000, well, the 3 poisons, the summary of all of them, 21,000 have a character of attachment, 21,000 have a character of anger or aversion, 21,000 have the character or taste of ignorance, and then the fourth 21,000 have a kind of have a character of all 3. Very coherent presentation. So the negative ones, for example, they're like the voices of ego, way to put it, you know. The root one, such as when it's uprooted, when we realize emptiness, and that comes later, is called simply in Tibetan ignorance. I mean, ignorance, a very simple word, ignorance, ma-rigpa, unawareness. It's very specific ignorance, you know, incredibly specific ignorance. And it's like double trouble ignorance. So regular ignorance is like you say to me, what is 1 + 1? And I will say, I don't know. That's ignorance. And that's easy to fix. You give me the right answer. There's nothing in my mind to prevent me from hearing it, and I'll go, thank you. And if we only had that kind of ignorance, we'd all be enlightened in a couple of years, I think. But the ignorance we've got, which is the double trouble ignorance, not only do we not know the right answer, 1 + 1 is 2, we're convinced it's 7. And we believe in it 7 for a long time, and we will fight to the death to protect our truth. And so strongly that even when we see 3, we see 7. So we've got not only the misconception that doesn't know reality, we believe in the opposite. And here is the opposite of reality. So this is why it's so hard to change our minds. So this root ignorance, which we'll go into later, is a root misconception. And basically it's a misconception of how things exist actually, which is kind of abstract for us. We'll go into it later. Now, we can call it colloquially ego grasping when it relates to the self. This primordial, deeply ingrained, fear-based, instinctive belief in the presence in here somewhere of a real, solid, pointable, findable, little kind of mini-me that runs the show. And it's quite subtle, and there are many levels of it. And that's the driver, but it's mostly like a sleeping lion. And its nature is fear. Its main voice is the second one, attachment. And then attachment, when it doesn't get what it wants, triggers the third one, aversion. So these simple words in English, such simple words, but knowing these, putting meat on the bones of these in your own daily practice, it's incredibly profound. You'll have an incredibly powerful view of yourself and indeed everybody else when you start to see the workings of these states of mind. As Nami says, I can tell you about attachment for 1 whole year. You'll never begin to understand it until you go deeply into your mind, and identify it. And the trouble with it is, then the word that, as we use it in our culture, we have a different definition. We all know that one same word can have many definitions. You've got to know the definition first. So when if I learn geometry and I learn something is flat, then I live in London in a flat. Well, if I didn't know the difference, I've got to live on a flat, do I? Oh, how boring. No, there's a different word. Same sound, same spelling, different definition. But but that's the same with attachment. So our view of attachment in our culture is it's a good quality. She's attached to her children. It's a good quality, close to each other. You bond. Nothing wrong. But that's not what Buddha's talking about. That's why when Lama Zopa says, when we hear that we've got to give up attachment because we have the wrong definition, we go, oh, I've got to give up my heart. I've got to give up my happiness. It's appalling. We don't understand what he's saying. So if you want to understand Buddha and start practicing, you've got to understand what he means by attachment, the one he is referring to. Well, it's a completely absurd, neurotic, delusional, ridiculous, demented, suffering state of mind. So what's he referring to is it's constantly there, and it's multifaceted, totally ingrained, completely spontaneous, living at the level of an assumption. So the obvious evidence. So it's okay. The first level of it is dissatisfaction. This painful feeling of not being enough, not having enough, never satisfied, never satisfied. Every millisecond, you try to give it what it wants, and it always wants more. It's like a bottomless pit. This is the most tortured part of it. And it's spontaneous. So this dissatisfaction leads then to hankering. Well, what's missing? So then the obvious first level is it's dumped onto the objects of the senses, the first level, the delicious taste, smells, tactile objects, and so on. And then it leads to all this manipulating and the kind of the controlling to get it, and then to possess it, and it's mine. But its key job, its key function conceptually, is it exaggerates the deliciousness of the object. But in a broader way, more emotional way, what attachment is, it's like a fragile child that only wants everything to be lovely every millisecond. And it's kind of really fragile and desperate. Every second, it's kind of anticipating and wanting nervously everything to be nice. And what that means, even in a more brutal way, is it wants what I want. Because nice means my view of nice. I don't care about your view of nice. If it's mixed, if it agrees with mine, then I'm prepared for you to be happy. But if you're wanting what you want is not mine, then I'm sorry, we have a clash, So it's totally self-centered in its nature, the source of suffering. So you could say that alongside it, this is our saving grace as humans, we have the virtues, the second category of states of mind. These are valid, reasonable. They're also conceptual, and we're going to go into this. They're the source of happiness, and they're connected to reality because they're related to interdependence because they bring in other people. So the virtues are connected to others. Sort of one's own sense of self expands to encompass another. The delusions, the afflictions like attachment is totally I-based, totally self-centered. And the stronger that is and the weaker your virtues, the more narcissistic, the more self-centered, the more all the words we use in the West, personality disorder, self-centered, blah, blah, blah. It just means you're totally self-centered and therefore you suffer terribly. The more virtue there are, the more it tempers the attachment. So attachment is dissatisfaction, constantly wanting more, emotional hunger. Then the tragedy is never satisfied, never satisfied. And then it exaggerates the deliciousness of the object, but also just this assumption that I must get what I want every second. I must get only the nice things. So what happens when it doesn't, and it's 1,000 times a day, that's aversion. That second panic attack comes, oh my God, go away. That's not what my attachment wants. So that's anger. Anger is a volatile expression of this aversion, irritation, annoyed, frustrated, upset, those polite words that we never pay attention to. They are moments of anger, but they're quiet. But you do not go to your therapist and say, oh, I got frustrated today. They'll laugh at you. That's the beginning of anger. And some people have volatile frustration, so they shout and yell. Some people are more quiet, but it's very sneaky, especially if you're a quiet person. It's very sneaky. So when attachment doesn't get what it wants, that's aversion. So for some of us, it expresses as volatile anger, and for some of us, it's totally internalized and becomes hopelessness and depression and despair. And these build up every second. These are working dynamically, but we just don't notice. Attachment and aversion. Intimate relationship between them. Intimate relationship. So the misconception the Buddha says we have here is that we believed, this is the middle scope now, more advanced, it's a subtler level of suffering. This is now pointing to the suffering of change. Back in the Noble Truth number 1, there's the suffering of suffering. And that's when the bad things happen. So to stop those, you start abiding by the laws of karma and you stop causing the future suffering by not killing, not stealing, not lying, and so on and so forth. And the subtle level, you get to high school, middle scope. Now you're going to look at the mind itself. And here we're now going to identify a subtle level of suffering, which Buddha calls the suffering of change. And this is completely, this is rooted in understanding attachment. So in our world, in our view, suffering of suffering is when the bad things happen, isn't it? Simply speaking, the suffering of suffering is when the attachment doesn't get what it wants. The wrong taste, the wrong flavor, the wrong words, the red lights and the traffic, the stubbing the toe, or the very heavy duty things. Hubby leaves you, someone harms you. Anytime attachment doesn't get what it wants. It sounds very cruel, but this is the analysis. That's why we suffer, because it doesn't get what it wants. So boyfriend punches the nose. You know, attachment only wants nice and kisses, so it has a panic attack. Complete panic attack, we know that. Freak out, anger arises, panic, freak out. So attachment only wants nice things. And we take this as a given. We take it as an absolute truth. Of course, and the added piece we put here is I only deserve nice things. So when aversion arises in the panic and the boyfriend punches you, how dare you do that to me? I don't deserve that. So this is the deserve one plays a massive role in our minds, and it's got no basis theoretically. It's nonsense. We've got to unpack that, and we will. It's an assumption deep in the bones of our being. We only deserve good things, and we do not ever deserve bad things. So the second kind of suffering, the suffering of change, is the first kind of suffering, the suffering of suffering, is what we call suffering, and that's when the bad things happen. We agree with Buddha. But now the second kind of suffering, unfortunately, that's what we call happiness. The suffering of change is when attachment gets what it wants. This is mind-boggling to us. We think, what kind of person is he? So we have to understand it. You know? It's a sneakier, more nuanced, more subtle level, more mean level of suffering. But it's easy to identify if we analyze it. We just don't like to. So how is it what we call happiness? Well, it's like Buddha says, when attachment does get what it wants, which is what we mean by happiness, it triggers a happy feeling. Nothing wrong with a happy feeling. Nothing wrong with a happy feeling. But because it's driven by attachment and the assumption that the only way to get happy feelings is to get the object of attachment, the cake, the boy, the praise, then we have to keep getting the object of attachment. That's our method for getting happy feelings. We have no other method. So the Buddha says, fine, you do get happiness. There's no problem. You do get a happy feeling, a moment of happiness. But what happens is this. Simple example is the cake or the boyfriend, whatever it is. The attachment gets the object that it's convinced will bring me happy feelings. And initially it does bring happy feelings, no argument. You eat that first taste of cake, it's extremely delicious, isn't it? It triggers the best happy feeling. And if you look at it later, analyze it, it's downhill from there. And this is the point. So what happens is this is what's cruel about it. So all the build-ups, there you are dissatisfied, you know. Oh, what's missing? You know, oh, cake. So like a little light bulb, it turns on, get all excited. Now attachment shifts from being dissatisfied to now galvanized into action, all anticipating the cake. And my feeling is the more we look at attachment, the anticipating of meeting the object is the best part. You know? Or the looking forward to the cake, looking forward to the boyfriend. That's so delicious, so delicious. The anticipating, the fantasy world runs wild, drives you to get the object. So you get the object. And then one thing that attachment does, already it's assumed, attachment is assuming that the cake's going to fill up the gaping hole and bring me happiness, trigger happy feelings, fill up the gaping hole, make the dissatisfaction go away. And what attachment's doing already is exaggerating the power of the cake and exaggerating the actual deliciousness of the cake. So when you look at that cake, you look at that object. So this is where we go back to the epistemological model of the mind for a moment. The epistemological model of the mind is where you merely how the mind functions. So here we have to look at, this is really helpful in this case of the cake and of everything we experience. So first of all, you've got the sensory consciousness. we said before. And then you have the mental consciousness. So eye consciousness, always the same example I use. This is not a good example. Let's say I say there's a pretty cup. I probably wouldn't, but let's pretend. I mean, it's sort of okay. You understand? I mean, it's a very nice person who gave me the cup, not complaining. So we naturally assume that my eyes are seeing a thing called a pretty cup. Well, it's just not possible, not true. Consciousness, eye consciousness, sensory consciousness for the Buddha, and it's obvious, it's provable. They're profoundly limited in their capacity for cognition, okay? Eye consciousness, all the senses are limited. So eye consciousness can only cognize two things, shape and color, that's it. It doesn't have the capacity. It's just shape and color, okay? But in a millisecond, quicker than Google, and I really mean this, quicker than Google, my mental consciousness is accessed, and that's where the workshop is. And what's that? That's where all my thoughts and feelings and emotions and viewpoints and opinions, all that massive stuff in there, conceptual stories about the objects of the five senses. If you think about it that way, okay? You know, throughout the day, we're meeting a bunch of the five objects of the five senses, aren't we? But we call them person, good, fat, lovely, ugly, tree, this, that. And then what happens is those opinions, a tree is an opinion, cup is an opinion, pretty cup is an opinion, ugly man is an opinion. But we don't think they're opinions. We think they're truths. You know? But it's a conceptual story. So quicker than Google, my mental consciousness where all my thoughts are saved is accessed, and out of my mouth comes, there is a pretty cup. So they happen so instantaneously that well, of course we assume it's our senses. No, not possible. I mean, this is so outrageous. This should completely transform our lives immediately, that the rest of all day we are living and believing in our opinions about what our senses are experiencing. And we think they're truth. We think that is in its nature a pretty cup, as if you put prettiness along with the clay when you made it, isn't it? Or the boyfriend that you adore. Attachment is running rampant, and that attachment, the degree of your attachment and emotional hunger for that person is the degree to which he looks totally divine. I remember. We know this. And then, of course, we believe he is divine in his bones. That's what Lama Zopa says, we don't think our mind plays a role at all. But our mind is the main player, interpreting this person. And then we believe it's true. That's how we stay stuck in samsara. That's the cause of suffering, Buddha says. We're living in layers upon layers of misconceptions. And because this is so programmed from countless lifetimes, it's beyond intellectual. We've totally practiced it to perfection. It's instinctive in us now because we've practiced it for so countless numbers of lives, you see. We don't even notice that we have this thought. It's beyond thought. It's already utterly assumed. And we get that's what traps us in samsara. As Lama Zopa Rinpoche says, that's the function of these afflictions. Their particular function in there being a misconception in the bones of their being is that they decorate on top of what is there layers upon layers of characteristics that just aren't there. That's how attachment functions. So here we are with the cake, okay? Attachment is run rampant. You're dissatisfied. You think of cake, get excited, and attachment switch from dissatisfaction to anticipation. You're waiting for that happiness to come. So excited. And you see the cake. You smell the cake. So your nose consciousness cognizes the smell. Your eye consciousness cognizes the shape. You know. And then of course the real point is to get it in the mouth, isn't it? And just look at it, or put it in your ear or somewhere. How silly, you know. Or just touch it. No, thank you. It's got to go in the mouth. We know that. So all this story is happening working overtime, and the assumption is when I get it, it's going to make the pain go away. It's like that. But what happens? This is the tragedy, and we can prove it's true. Attachment's still there, and first of all, it was dissatisfaction. It switched into anticipating, and now it's anticipating that moment of pleasure that will come when the cake meets the sensory of the mouth. Do you understand? It does come. It does come. It is pleasure. It is pleasure. Guaranteed pleasure. But what Buddha calls it is contaminated pleasure, because it's the pleasure of a junkie. Because attachment's a junkie mind. So what happens, the attachment's there, right there, next to you, right there, and attachment is waiting for the pleasure to come. The pleasure comes, and you know what? Attachment says, not enough, Robina, put another mouthful in. And it's downhill from there until you want to vomit. That's called the suffering of change. Are we communicating? Yeah. It's really cruel, but we know it's true, and no one made us do it. We've practiced it, and that's why we're always disappointed. So we go up and down like yo-yos 1,000 times a day, trying to get happy, and then we get bumped and then we bump our head against a brick wall. We try again the next day. We forgot. We forget the cake that made us vomit. No, we forget that the cake that we think causes happiness is the one that made us vomit as well. But we forget that conveniently. That's why you can say in really intense relationships between two people, where one is the victim and gets abused. I'm not talking women or men, but you can see what I'm saying. Because a strong karmic history with each other, strong attachment, it just draws you, like glues you together, And he keeps beating you and abusing you, and you run back like a magnet because you forget the person you're still attached to is the one who beat you the day before. But because attachment is just primordial until one day it goes and you think, this is ridiculous, I've got to leave, Suffering of change. And the thing is, with all this, we should have it should make us weeping with compassion for ourselves, not criticizing ourselves. This is why we suffer, Buddha says. So my mother, with food, I was attached to food, as a little girl. I remember she used to say, and this is the thing about, okay, before I say what she said, because she agrees with Buddha. But Buddha's saying, this is called the suffering of change. Initially, there is pleasure, and you can't say it's not pleasure, and we'll go into what that means. But it's contaminated because it's so polluted by the attachment, the craving, that it's too agitated. It's agitated pleasure, And it diminishes the pleasure. The more you get the habit, the more the pleasure is diminished because it's so full of craving and never satisfied. As you keep eating, there's just less satisfaction. And the tragedy is, not only does it not satisfy you, as my mother used to say, Bobsy, she'd say, the more you get, the more you want. So as I was, Buddha doesn't even own this truth. He just has identified it. That's all. This is the suffering of attachment. And the fact of the matter of attachment, it can't ever be satisfied. It is a bottomless pit. Its nature is to be dissatisfied. It can't be satisfied. So therefore we have to ask the question, well, what's Buddha's method for getting happy? Because he's got a method for getting happy, he says. So basically he's saying what he has found is that you people, and he used to be like that, think that happy feelings, I'm going to go into what they mean. Happy feelings are what we get when we get what attachment wants. That's the methodology, and he calls that samsaric philosophy, and that's what suffering is. He says, no, I have discovered that what happiness is, happy feelings, are what you get, and that can't change into unhappy feelings like the other kind do. The happy feeling based on the cake, and you have another piece wanting more happiness, it becomes unhappiness until you eventually want to vomit. But so he says he has found that actually happy feelings that won't change into unhappy feelings, because in fact happy feelings are the nature of a pure mind, are what you get, what you end up with when you give up attachment. That's Buddhism. That's what Buddha's saying. That's his methodology. That's what he's found to be true. That's it. Are we communicating? Yeah. That's hard work, that's all. Just hard work. And you don't have to wait till you realize emptiness to get the total happiness. You just have to know that as you keep giving up that attachment and not believing in it so often and learning to be satisfied. And this is what's fascinating. As Lama Zopa says, what time's lunch? 12:30. Okay, thank you. So as Lama Zopa says, the happiness that comes from following attachment can't grow. It can only diminish. And that's, again, we have to see the truth of that. Even if it's a more subtle level of attachment, the attachment to being seen as a good girl, which is not sensory, that's mental. That can't ever be satisfied. If you're really craving your boyfriend's approval, which means it's coming from, that's why attachment is coming from a broken person. We're all broken people. We're all half little people walking around craving to be filled up, you know. So the stronger our craving for someone else, the less we have, the less respect we have for ourselves. So that the more I crave you to tell me you love me, you can tell me every day you love me. You can lie next to me 24 hours a day. You can feed me your blood. I'll still be dissatisfied. I still want you to say it again. Don't understand me? We can see that suffering. That's so the happy feelings that are triggered when attachment seems to get what it wants. The happy feelings that are triggered by attachment can't grow. That's the tragedy of attachment. So then the question has to be, well, how do I get happiness, please, Buddha? Mate, by giving up attachment. And then the happy feelings in the mind, they come from virtue. Happy feelings and happy experiences are the fruit of virtue. Not now, immediately, but you've got to practice it, like Warren Buffett. Unhappy feelings are the fruit of delusions and virtues now and in the future. So we have to practice. So the happiness we're talking about here is the happiness of being content, of being satisfied, of feeling fulfilled. They are simple words that literally are synonymous with the word happy feeling. So we've got to look at the third category now of states of mind. There are three categories. The neurotic, deluded, I-based, fear-based ones that cause suffering. The virtues, the positive ones, love, compassion, kindness, generosity, forgiveness, that cause happiness. And the third category, I call them the mechanics of the mind. They're things like intention, not like motivation, but bare bones volition. I will, I want. Intention, attention, concentration, mindfulness. These are bare bones kind of mechanical parts of our mind that when they're functioning well, cause us to function well. So whether you're a murderer or a meditator, you need them. As Lama Zopa says, thieves need mindfulness. You know, a sniper needs very good mindfulness, very good concentration. And there's another one called discrimination, the ability to discriminate second by second between this and that, every second. They need a lot of that one. They're neither virtuous nor non-virtuous. So they depend upon the reason you're doing them, the motivation for doing them, as to whether those actions driven by them are virtuous or non-virtuous. So curiously, for us, because we're not thinking this way, the term feeling in Buddhism is a huge one. It's not the equivalent of emotion, not at all. It's referring to only three kinds, and it's in the mechanical section. Happy, pleasant feeling, unpleasant feeling, or neutral. So let's forget the neutral, okay? All we want in every sentient being is the same, and Buddha has identified this. Every being only wants happy feelings, and indeed, you know, experiences that trigger happy feelings. And nobody wants unhappy feelings, unpleasant experiences. So pleasant is a kind of boring word, but very pleasant, delicious, divine, blissful, ecstatic, rapture. There's a whole spectrum of pleasant feelings, aren't there? Do you understand? And there's a whole spectrum of unpleasant feelings, from the mildest kind of slight stubbing of the toe to being tortured, you know. They're very real experiences. And that's because we have a mind based on a body of the five senses. We're going to have those experiences tremendously, aren't we? So every second of any experience in the mind of unhappiness, anything out there where bad things happen to us, or bad environment, they are the fruit of negative actions and negative states of mind, and they ripen as suffering feelings, unpleasant feelings, and suffering experiences. Every moment that we experience a happy feeling and happy experiences, That's the fruit of virtue. So this simple level that we're talking here, and there's no fancy business here. This is just straightforward first level, entry level, junior school, grade 1 level of recognizing I don't want any longer any suffering feelings or experiences, and I do want happy ones. It's a simple level. As we get more advanced, we'll even give up that. Don't worry. We'll go one step at a time. It's very grounded. It's very on the earth, you know. So feeling, this is where, to experience, okay, when you eat that cake, okay, no, even more complicated when you have that boy, the one you're in love with. So with that boy, you've got intense, incredible attachment, just like for the cake. But there's an added component because it's a sentient being. You know, you also have love for that sentient being. You want him to be happy. That's a virtue. In the third category, you've got this one called feeling. And every millisecond of the day, you're going to have a pleasant or an unpleasant one. Forget the neutral. So there's a massive vested interest in us, isn't there, based on attachment, to get that boy to do what my attachment wants, because then I think it's going to trigger my happy feelings. So many relationships are like that. You know, the boy, let's say, adores the girl, loves the girl, only wants to do what the girl wants because that fulfills his craving to be seen as a nice boy and fulfill his craving, his attachment to get happy feelings. It's completely deluded, you know. It's not based on love at all. It's completely manipulative. And being the recipient of that type of love, so-called love, is very delicious. When someone loves you every day and praises you and adores you and strokes you and wants you to be happy and looks you in the eye and makes sure you get everything you like, that's very delicious. We all want that. That's not called love. That's called attachment. But what I'm getting at is virtually impossible experientially until we're very advanced to be able to distinguish in this example between discrimination, attention, feeling, compassion, love, and attachment. They're mixed like a great big soup, and not just bits of veggies floating around, but it's pureed soup. We cannot distinguish. That's the skill we must develop. That's being a Buddhist. That's why we've got to have concentration, to have this laser-like subtle focus that is a brilliant, it's like this microscope of your mind that can identify all these pieces in there that we can't possibly even identify right now. Only just touch on the surface of them. Because happy feeling is not attachment. Angry feeling is not anger, unhappy feeling is not anger, but they come utterly together. And love and attachment come together. So we assume they're the same thing. I love you, I will say to that boyfriend, was probably mostly 90% attachment. But love is a delight as an altruistic state of mind. May you be happy. And as long as he does what my attachment wants, I'm prepared for him to be happy. So our love is contingent on attachment getting what it wants. It's very subtle and it's hard to see the difference. Not to mention distinguishing between a happy feeling and attachment. It's almost impossible for us. They're separate states of mind. It's extremely sophisticated psychology. You know? Are we communicating? This is Buddha's view of the mind. It's not Freud, not Jung. You might agree, they might agree, but this is Buddha's view. So we have to want happiness. Don't be all noble. Oh, that's too selfish. Excuse me, one step at a time, okay? Enter junior school first. You've got to stop wanting suffering and want happiness. Straightforward. That'll stop you from causing future suffering and will start to cause you to create future happiness. Very intelligent. Then you start to give up attachment and aversion and you're already becoming powerful. Then you go to the bodhisattva path and you benefit others. Then you realize emptiness and then you're done. You know, it's one step at a time. It's incremental, gradual, humble on the earth. So the way to get happy feelings, totally fantastic. As Lama Yeshe would say, the more pleasure, the better. So as soon as you say the word pleasure, it sounds like a sin, doesn't it? That's another word for happy feeling, that's all. There's nothing wrong. The more pleasure, the better. He means it literally. So the way to get happy then, every day to practice, this is literally the answer, is to practice the thought of being content. I'm doing fine. Enough, dear. Good enough. Lama Yeshe's favorite saying was good enough. I'm doing well. I'm okay. 3, second piece of cake, you're still craving, but you know it's not going to make you satisfied. You know it'll just give you acid reflux and you'll get annoyed with yourself because you now get fat again and got to go on a diet tomorrow. So you stop. And even though the attachment's running the show, craving for another piece, you don't buy into it. You say, I've had enough, Robina. I'm content. And you keep your hand in your lap. And before you know it, you'll start practicing being content. So you have to practice contentment. And it's mental. It's mental. It's mental. Don't wait for happiness to come. You actively practice having content thoughts. That is what happy feelings come from. You just practice a new habit of being content, which argues with attachment, which is never content. Now, our trouble in our culture is that contentment sounds like laziness, that contentment sounds like kind of complacency. No. It's a bit like, I like the example.
Settling.
Say it again.
Contentment sounds like settling.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, like a lazy, no. So let me give you an example. I like the example like you decide to study music. And you're all eager and excited, and you get to grade 1 and you pass grade 1. And then straight away you go, oh, I'm only in grade 1. And you're dissatisfied already. Oh, I better get to grade 2. I'll get happy then. Oh, I'm only in grade 2. And you get to grade 997, you're still miserable. So what you do is you'd be happy you've got grade 1. You'd be delighted, and that gives you the energy to want to get even more music. So you go to grade 2 and you get happy then. So you grow the contentment. So the right kind of contentment is not complacency. It's not just laziness. It's feeling fulfilled. And then you can get more fulfillment, so you grow. Simple way of putting it. Do you understand? It's mental. It's mental. You've got to train your mind. We wait for happiness. We're like passive. We wait for happiness to come. Kind of, where's happiness? Got to practice mental. It's mental. Learning to be content. Learning to be content. It won't make it happen overnight. So that's what practicing giving up attachment to food means. Not just suffocating yourself, not just being guilty, not just, sitting on top of yourself. Practicing controlling your body, keep your hand in your lap. And then doing the analysis. Every time the idea of food pops up, and it pops up all the time, it's automatic. Instantly, the feeling when you see, and especially you see the food is so dominating, before you know it's in the mouth again. So you just have to remember your decision. I'm not going to eat too much food. You remember your decision and you know the benefits of it because you're going to give up. 1, you're going to help you get more healthy, but 2, it'll help your mind get more satisfied. And then you learn to feel 2 is enough. 2 is enough. You don't just suffocate yourself and get all depressed, but you think it's enough. And you practice that thought. Practice makes perfect. Or as the Tibetans would say, nothing ever gets more difficult with practice. It's a lovely way to put it. I love that one. That's a very nice, more humble one. So you got to practice it. And just, moving towards the future, like going to the gym every day. If you go to the gym on the first day expecting to be, Arnie Schwarzenegger overnight, you'll be very disappointed. But even you go back in the mirror after the gym on the first day, you look the same, fat and ugly, but you're moving towards looking like Arnie, Just my point. There's intelligence. Right. 2 o'clock. Okay, questions, please. Questions. So we're talking different levels. We're talking junior school, which is abide by the laws of karma, control your body and speech. You focus on that. Then got more space. Now you can go to the next level and start to become aware of what drives your behavior, the thoughts. As Lama says, learn to be your own therapist. And he's really being serious, based on this model of the mind, working with yourself. It's full-on work every day. And this has got nothing yet to do with compassion. This is to do with working on yourself. This is to do with you developing yourself. The jobs are quite specific. But the key one to see is that the afflictions, the emotional afflictions, are rooted in being misconceptions. They exaggerate the status of the thing. Attachment exaggerates the deliciousness of the object. And after 4 pieces, the aversion in your mind now exaggerates the ugliness of the cake. We just know this. I'm so attached to my food. And I love, anticipating going to a restaurant or something. When you're there, you go, you're all anticipating, all excited. And you look at the menu, get excited. You look at the meals coming to the other tables. I wish I'd ordered that one, And then the food comes, it's all fresh and delicious and new and hot and wonderful. And then by the time you've stuffed yourself full, you look at the other plates and this brand new food over the other table, how disgusting it looks, right? I mean, we know this, but we never join the dots, The cake we're seeing, the food we're seeing is not the way the food exists. Because delusion is exaggerated. All the way to the root delusion, ignorance exaggerates. Just more subtle, that's all. And it's only when we get single point of concentration that we start to see this subtle level of how these emotions are rooted in being, these subtle conceptual stories. We have to deconstruct and use logic to disprove them because they're not true. They're not a valid assessment of how things exist. So there's even the ones of grasping at things as having a permanent nature. That's not a valid concept. Grasping at things as being no cause and effect. Grasping at things as being more delicious than they really are. Grasping at things as being more ugly than they are. Grasping at the self, and God knows which way. We go from pillar to post, don't we, in our own view of ourselves. Never getting the right picture, exaggerating, always exaggerating, distorting, embellishing, exaggerating. It's all going up and down like yo-yos. Bipolar. We're all bipolar. I'm not kidding. All these fancy words we use in the West, they're all just variations of attachment. ADHD is attachment. OCD is attachment. Variations of attachment. Bipolar attachment. Manic depression, they used to call years ago, it's attachment. Up and down like yo-yos. All excited and divine, and you fall into despair, up and down like yo-yos, Not in touch with reality. That's how Buddha talks. That's why we suffer. And then based on these misconceptions, we harm others. All driven by the craving to get what I want. So we have such compassion for ourselves. It's just habits, a bunch of habits, We're just driven by habits. And we can change habits. Habits by definition can be changed. That's what's encouraging. And it's slowly, slowly. Which is why we have to also add to our practice in this stages, especially when you've got your hands in your own shit, as a friend of mine said. There's really intense inner work. Got to remember to rejoice. Lama Zopa says just having one positive thought, rejoicing in your own virtue, rejoicing in your goodness is like miraculous. And we need it to calm the poor crazy mind down, because we forget to see our virtues. We forget to see our good qualities. Incredibly important. So, okay, so karma ripens, back to karma now. So karma is the first cause of suffering and the delusions are the second, and they come together. Or the karma is driven, the action is driven by the delusion. So we deal with karma in the first scope, junior school, we deal with the mind in the second, in high school. First one is focused on just protecting yourself. Protecting your behavior. Work on your behavior. Control the body, control the speech. Don't harm others, therefore don't harm yourself. So karma ripens in 4 ways: a type of rebirth, the tendencies in the mind in that rebirth, your experiences at the hands of others, broadly speaking, in that rebirth, how you're seen and treated by others. And the 4th one is even the physical world, how it impacts upon you. I mean, if we look at your life, everything's covered by those 4. You're very healthy, that's the 4th one. Environmental karma, the result of virtue. You're not so healthy, that every time it arises in ill health, you eat the wrong food or whatever it is, that's the fruit of harming and killing in the past. The second, the experience of how it being seen by others in a nice way, that's the fruit of your virtue. Being seen in a bad way, by being harmed, by being cheated on, by being lied to, stolen from, not believed, all the other variations of suffering at the hands of others is due to actions like those in the past. All the good experiences of people loving you, being kind to you, giving you things, receiving things, the fruit of your virtue. Every second, one or the other. And then your mind, all those tendencies, your habits, programmed. They're programmed. Your habits, and then the body itself that you get, human birth, which is the best one. It's the best of a bad lot. The so-called God realms is just in the nature. It's just totally blissful. In other words, it's the fruit of a lot of virtue. Of the virtue of being good, and that ripens as this blissful state of being where your 4 elements are really just like subtle light. So there's blissful karmic appearances, as they say, of very blissful experiences. immense bliss and joy. Happiness is the fruit of virtue, very technical. So why they get a human birth, which is not so fancy, is because you at least can access your intelligence, access your virtue, and do something about yourself. In the God realms, you're so blissed out, you can't think of anything. You're just overwhelmed by the delight of everything. So the human birth is a better one from the perspective that you can use your intelligence to want to get out all of them, quit a lot of them, And nothing much you can do as an animal or a spirit or a hell being. You're kind of lost there because the suffering's so intense, you can't see past your own nose. That's the bigger picture of the suffering in the lower realms. The bigger picture of the suffering of change is the human realm and the God realms. And then the third level, there's a third kind of suffering, more abstract, called all-pervasive suffering. And this is like being born in the first place in the realm of existence. So therefore bound by the rules of that samsara. So if you want to quit the first kind of suffering, you abide by the laws of karma and stop harming others. You practice junior school. If you want to stop the suffering of change, and you give up attachment. And if you want to quit all pervasive suffering, you realize emptiness. That's the methodology for getting out of samsara and quitting the three kinds of suffering in the First Noble Truth. Are we communicating? Okay. All the methodologies laid out in order. It's up to us if we want it or not. And it's one step at a time, slowly. It's only 12:06. I think it's time for a break, but questions, okay. Go. Hang on. Elon, go, Elon, go. Thank you. Go.
How do we reconcile good and bad in the same situation? So imagine you're in a car accident and you obviously karma has come about, but you come out of it okay, and you've got a problem, but you're living in Manhattan. So it's almost like there's good and bad in each.
No, there is. True. It's true.
So
exactly.
how do you sort of approach that?
Every second. So if you take everything in isolation, every moment that triggers an unhappy feeling is the fruit of delusion. But at the same time, there's fruits of virtue also ripening. But there's also a way to use this view to help you really practice in the face of problems, which is where, especially in the Bodhisattva path, we can learn to use problems, or as Lama Zopa says, to learn to like problems like we like ice cream. So usually the response to problems is it's a drag and we don't want them and push them away. But if we're on the Bodhisattva path, we're trying to smash our delusions and grow compassion. Every time a bad thing happens, you're delighted because one, it's the end of that karma, it's just finished. And you can use this to grow, give up attachment, give up aversion, and get stronger and stronger and more compassionate. So it's a marvelous opportunity. So there's always, in the end, is how you interpret things. That's why I use the example of my friends in prison. I worked for many years running a prison thing, and my friends in prison, many of them in these garbage dump places. One of my friends, Mitchell, on death row. I've known him since the mid-90s. Okay, and he's getting. Like all the people on death row in this country, you're sentenced to death, but then you do your appeal, and they're all poor people. I've never met a rich person on death row, I promise, unless they're a psychopath. Only poor people. It's always the poor people, So this Mitchell's like this working class boy in Kentucky, and he was in him and his friend Leaf were in some kind of drug thing. And when you have drugs, you have guns, and when you have guns, people die. So people died, and so he's on death row. Has been there since the 90s. So then you start doing your appeals. You get this free lawyers, and the defense lawyers are free, paid for by the state. That's why I think if Americans really realize how much keeping death row costs them millions of dollars, they'd be happy to have them just, get them out of prison and be done with it, stop charging us, Because it must cost trillions of dollars. And they're there for 30 years. Many people die on death row because, they're running out of time. So anyway, Mitchell's been there 30 years, living in this garbage dump in Kentucky, big old. It's on the best piece of real estate over this lovely river, this lovely lake. It's beautiful. There's this old Victorian bluestone thing. And in the summer, it's boiling hot. In the winter, it's freezing cold. I've eaten there. The food is not fun, I promise. And I think he's got his own room. I'm not sure. He's been there 30 years. Maybe he deserves his own room. I'm not sure. But he's been practicing all these years that I've known him. So there he is, living in his red jumpsuit. He lives in a particular area where all the death row guys live together in their red jumpsuits. And he's a happy guy. I mean, the censors get no pleasure in those prisons. The temperature's appalling. The food is disgusting. Designers don't design these places, I promise. So everything, all your senses are kind of are bombarded with rubbish. But he's been practicing for like 30 years. He's funny. He's hilariously funny. And he says, I'm ready for that electric jolt, Robina. He's already in one of the meetings I had with him a couple of years ago. We write regularly, and I'll see him because he's going to die soon, I think. And he asked me about how he would be when he dies, when they come and kill him, because he was sentenced in the 80s. He has to be executed with electricity, even though it's no longer legal. It's got to be electrified, right? So he explained to me what happens. The dude will come up, the guard, whoever the man is, and come, like he's this close to him, and puts all this, it wires him up and puts on this wet sponge and a cloth over his face. And he said, what do you think, Robina? Should I be thinking of my own practice, or should I be trying to have compassion for him? And I thought, well, maybe it's best to stay inside yourself and let him do his job, That's fine. Let him do his job. Leave him alone. Because he's just trying to work out how to die with a happy mind, Anyway, what I'm getting at is he's a happy guy. He's trained his mind. And this is a key point. Another one really profound way to talk about what being a Buddhist means. You learn to interpret things differently. So the way we interpret things now is based on attachment. When it gets what it wants, we call it lovely, and we crave it again. And when we don't get what it wants, we call it ugly, and we want to push it away. So when you're practicing, and that's where, especially if you're in prison, because you don't have the luxury of choice. Their backs are against the wall. They don't have the luxury of choice. That's why I find people in prison very empowering and very, admirable. Because we in the outside world who have the freedom to leave that job any day, we have the freedom to leave that relationship any day, but it's as if we're imprisoned. We don't think we have a choice. We're absolutely imprisoned, So you tell me about I'll tell you about my crummy job, right? I moan and complain about my lousy boss, and he might be a lousy boss. And you say, well, Robina, you could leave the job and get another. Oh, no, couldn't do that. Anyway, why should I? He should change, not me. And then you say, well, if you can't change your job, how about changing your interpretation of your job so you can be happy? No, it's a terrible job. I can't do that. So we can't make a decision to change the relationship, and we can't change our mind. So we're paralyzed. So these people in prison, at least my friends, I admire them. They don't have the luxury of changing their environment, so they know they can change their mind. So he's a happy guy. He's a funny, hilarious, happy guy. Takes care of all the maniacs on death row. He makes little things for people, Writes to many people. Studies his Dharma, does his practice early in the morning, a couple of hours, 3 hours every day, ready for his death. He's a happy guy. He's interpreting it differently. That's the really powerful thing. That's what's implied in Buddha's view. At the very first level, it's just too advanced. The very first level, if you're in the middle of being an alcoholic, you can't start interpreting alcohol differently. Just give yourself a break. Remove yourself from the object. Work on your attachment. Calm your mind down. At a more sophisticated level, then you can begin to greet the problem because you're now under control and you can reinterpret it. That's really powerful. So that's what my friends in prison do. I have great admiration for them. And Sonny, my friend Sonny, I always quote this story repeatedly. Accused, I mentioned it, I think, accused of murdering 2 policemen with a husband. Death row, 17 years in Florida. Totally innocent. In a cell, 24 hours a day. Husband executed. She went to the execution. His head burst into flames. Lost her children. Lost her mother and father. In a nightmare, in a prison, in a cell with a Bible. So she said, finally, I realized I couldn't change anything, but they couldn't take my mind from me. So I decided I'm not in a prison. I'm in a cave. I'm not a prisoner. I'm a monk. So she's not religious, but she means she changed her interpretation to her advantage. The conclusion was she became happy. She developed her own practice. She's not interested in karma or God or anything like that. Didn't think about that. But she was so powerful. She saw that anger and despair harmed her. Anger and despair harmed her, so she changed her mind. And I met her later. I mean, we never actually met face to face, but on videos and phone calls. And she's a little old, basically, she died now, but she's basically like, she looked like a little old lady. And you'd never know from meeting her that she had this incredibly powerful history because she'd worked on it. She didn't have trauma because she worked on it. She'd solved it. She'd fixed it. She's a little old lady. You'd never see. I know many people who've been in prison for years and they carry this pain with them because they haven't dealt with it, their own suffering and their anger and their resentment. She's a very amazing example. Changing her interpretation. That's the real job. That's the miracle. Because things don't exist in the way they appear. They appear to us through the lenses of our anger, attachment, jealousy, low self-esteem, ego grasping, and the rest. So therefore we misconceive them, or they are misrepresented back to us, as Lama Zopa says. Or they appear back to us, as Lama Yeshe says, in the mirror of our mind. Our mind is like a mirror. It reflects. This is a very powerful way to see the mind. The mind merely reflects what's there. And if your mind is clear and pure, it's accurate. But our minds are polluted by anger, attachment, jealousy, low self-esteem, and all the rest. So we're never seeing things as they are. And the tragedy is bad enough, as Lama Zopa says, that they appear wrongly to us. The worst thing is that we believe it's true. We don't think our mind plays a role. We don't think our mind is doing any misinterpretation. We think that whatever appears to us exists like that. Delicious cake, ugly person, whatever it is, horrible me, whatever it is. This is why we suffer, Buddha says.
Thank you.
Not being in touch with reality. So it's like you've got a $50 note, and for so long you believed it's 500. I mean, so much so that you see 2 zeros. So you believe 500 is worth. So you anticipate spending 500 and getting 500's worth. Of course you do. And guess what the response will be? Bitter disappointment. Every time. And you try to do it again tomorrow and you forget. And again the next day you forget. So we're being punched in the nose every day by our false expectations of attachment. And then we forget. Next day we try again. And the afflictions are all in the nature of fear. Why fear? It's because for so long we have believed in things that don't exist. So it's like, and we've been disappointed 1,000,000 times. So of course there's fear there. Of course there's terrible fear. And when you realize emptiness, as Lama Yeshe says, as Lama Zopa says, there is no fear. And as Lama Yeshe says, when you realize emptiness, no longer there's a separate sense of I. Because believing in the separate I implies other. I think we can have a lunch break. Let's do a meditation to finish. Okay, do Vajrasattva to finish. We'll do a different kind of Vajrasattva. So visualize the Buddha now. Vajrasattva, his lotus comes dissolves up into his body in light. Just think like that, very naturally. And he comes very happily to sit above our crowns. Imagine in this Sambhogakaya form, the enjoyment body of the Buddha, Bodhisattva form, very blissful, radiant light, enlightened mind, radiant, blissful, compassionate wise, embodied in this form. Above our crown. Holding a bell in his left hand, crossed at his heart, and his right hand over that, holding a vajra. Sitting full lotus position. Silken clothes, radiant face, beautiful, bodhisattva aspect. So now imagine he sends powerful nectar from his heart, arcs around, enters our crown. And this time filling us completely with nectar. And what it does is imagine purifying all the obstacles in our mind that prevent us from understanding karma and prevent us from understanding the delusions, which are the 2 causes of suffering. Imagine all of these misconceptions about karma, all the misconceptions about our mind, all the misconceptions about the way the mind works. Totally purified. This nectar fills us completely and drives out all these nonsense misconceptions in our mind as like filthy liquid disappearing into space. As you say a couple of times the mantra, or just visualize that. Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Teno Patita Dido Mebawa Suto Shayo Mebawa Subo Shayo Mebawa Anurakta Mebawa Sarva Siddhi Memprayatsa Sawa Karma Sutsa Me Sitam Shriyam Kuru Hung Ha 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 Ho Bhagavan Sarva Tathagata Vajramami Musa Vajraba Mahasama Sattva Hung Pe Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Teno Patita Tito Mebawa Suto Shayo Mebawa Subo Shayo Mebawa Anurakta Mebawa Sarva Siddhi Memprayasa Sawa Karma Sutsa Me Sitam Shriyam Kuru Hung Ha 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 Ho Bhagavan Sarva Tathagata Vajramami Mutsa Vajraba Mahasama Sattva Hung Pe Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Teno Patita Dido Mebawa Sudoshayo Mebawa Suboshayo Mebawa Anurakta Mebawa Sarva Siddhi Memprayasa Sawa Karma Sutsa Me Siddham Shriyam Kuru Hung Ha 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 Ho Bhagavan Sarva Tathagata Vajramami Musa Vajraba Mahasma Sattva Hung Pe. Totally purified, imagine. It's our mind, you know. It's our mind. So as Amayeshi says, we create negativity with the mind, so we purify it by having positivity with the mind. That's it. The power of the positivity is what counteracts the negativity. It's a natural thing. There's no inherent big fat ugly me in there. Sometimes we think, oh, I did all the purification, I'm still bad. There's no inherent permanent you in there at all. It's a gradual process. Gradual process. That's it. Be happy. So now imagine Bodhisattva very happily dissolves into light, absorbs through our crown. Then we imagine can be completely full of the energy of the body, speech, and mind of the Buddha, body, speech, and mind of our Lama, and my body, speech, mind. Same thing, oneness, same. This is me. And then just expand yourself to fill the universe like a mind. Imagine your mind, pure, subtle, all-knowing, all-compassionate, all-wise, pervading space, blissful, clear, no thoughts. All right. So then we happily finish with the four immeasurable thoughts, the thoughts of the Bodhisattva. Give us the courage to continue working on ourselves, getting rid of our own nonsense so we can become these more marvelous, fulfilled, content human beings. So then we can begin to help others. But we've got to help ourselves first. So we think with the four immeasurable thoughts, how wonderful it will be if all sentient beings could abide in equanimity, free of attachment, anger, and ignorance. May they abide so. This brave attitude of the Bodhisattva, the brave attitude of the Bodhisattva, this sense of responsibility, as if every sentient being were one's child. I will make this happen. Please, Guru Vajrasattva, bless me to be able to do this. How wonderful it would be if all sentient beings were free of suffering and its causes. May they be free. I will make this happen. Please, Guru Bodhisattva, bless me to be able to do this. How wonderful it would be if all sentient beings could have happiness and its causes, including, as Lama Zopa says, enlightenment, the happiness of enlightenment, ultimate happiness. May they have them. I'll make this happen. Please, Buddha Bodhisattva, bless me to be able to do this. How wonderful it will be if all sentients were never parted from higher rebirths and liberations, excellent bliss. May they never be parted. I'll make this happen. Please, Buddha Bodhisattva, bless me to be able to do this. So visualize our lunch. Instead of walking to the kitchen and then imagining it, anticipating it, attachment is anticipating it. And then if attachment gets what it wants, you get all excited, right? And if it's not, then don't worry. Just think, that's okay. So kind, these people. So think of the kindness of others and eat it happily, even though it might be exactly what you want. The hard work of all those sentient beings, the cooks and the people and the drivers and the animals who died, all of these beings. I'm going to eat something fat and healthy for their benefit. And then we think of the food and we add a little extra thing from it, from Tantra. We visualize a massive container in the sky and we imagine blessing it with the energy of enlightened body, speech, and mind. The Sanskrit syllables Om, Ah, Hum melt into it and make it transcendental nectar. Imagine this, as big as the ocean. And then we happily offer it. Lama Zopa Rinpoche says that in Tantra, in Vajrayana, the very meaning of the word to offer is to visualize. The essence of it is visualizing, imagining all the recipients, the holy beings, all the sentient beings. Imagine the whole world full of beings. The recipients, the experiencing of the pleasure of receiving it is the very essence of the meaning of the word to offer. So imagine that. All these sentient beings bliss out. If we could, we would offer to every one of them this delicious food. Lama Sangye Lama Che Dejan Lama Gedun Te Kungi Jepo Lama Te Lama Namla Sherpa Boom. And then we dedicate thinking all these seeds we planted this last 2 hours. Not one will go astray. So we kind of want to make the decision to nourish these seeds with our future virtue, with our effort, with our practice. So they do ripen in exactly as we motivated to become a Buddha. So then we're qualified to help others. No matter how long, as long term as you like, then it all kind of, nourishes those seeds. So then what's happening now is it's 12:30. What's our next schedule?
Break, and then there's afternoon discussion groups.
What time? 2:30? 2 o'clock? 3 o'clock. So, okay. So then relax, enjoy your lunch, do what you like. But one of the things that I ask, even though, 3 o'clock, if you feel like doing it, no one's forcing you, have a little group of you, 2 or 3, no more, and just chew through all this stuff. Take one topic and unpack it, So, of course, ideally, it'd be really good if in the break times, make it part of the retreat, but if you do talking about this stuff. It's like, otherwise, if you decide to be silent, this is perfect, so be silent. Or if you're going to talk, make this the topic. Then it makes it part of the retreat. It's ideal. I mean, I'm not saying you can't talk about football or Mr. Trump if you want to, but talk about him afterwards. And this is an example of suffering or attachment. That's a recommendation. And then if you want to, there's 3 to 4, have a little group of you, 2 or 3 of you, and nut it out. Discuss things and come with questions at 4. Yeah? Thank you, people. You too on Zoom. Come with your questions later. Okay, darlings. Bye.